Welcome to your video for the break-even hotel example for your practice exercises for test 2. So before we get started, I'm actually going to add some more rows here so you can, because we're going to need some room. And let's just do the same again. We'll delete some after. So, last year, your 90-room hotel had an average room rate of $185 running an occupancy of 70%. Its fixed costs were $1.5 million per year and variable costs are $1.5 million almost again. The income tax rate for the hotel is 32%. So we need to find out the hotel's break-even occupancy. So before we get into calculating any type of break-even, let's do a quick review where we find out again. What do we need? We need contribution margin percentage. Okay? And what does contribution margin percentage equal? Well, it equals 100% minus variable cost percentage. Okay? So we should feel good about that. Where did it go? Oh, there you go. Perfect. So let's review break-even sales revenue, BESR. Break-even sales revenue is where we divide our fixed costs divided by our contribution margin percentage. So we need to find out our contribution margin percentage if we're going to find out anything. And then our break-even units, if you remember, is our break-even sales revenue divided by our average unit selling price. In this case, a unit in hotels is a room sold. Okay? A unit in a restaurant is a cover. Okay, so just let me make it so you can see this, sorry. And then lastly, to find out our break-even occupancy, okay, we need to find out our break-even units divided by our room nights available. And so these are some of the formulas that you really want to feel comfortable here. Okay? You need to know these before coming into a test. So let's start off with how much revenues we had last year. Okay? Now we're going to find this out and you're going to figure out why in a second. So revenues for last year, and we need to, that's not, okay. And then we need to find out a variable cost percentage, because if you take a look here, 100% minus variable cost percentage is our contribution margin percent. We don't have a variable cost percent here. We only have variable costs from last year. And we can also find out our average daily rate from last year doing a bit of math. So to find out that average daily rate, we're going to do our rooms available from last year, which is 90 rooms. We're going to multiply it by how many days there are in a year. We then need to multiply it by the occupancy percentage from last year. And then finally by our average daily rate. So if we do this math, okay, rooms available, which is our 90 rooms, times days of the year, that's going to give me the number of room nights available for the whole year. Okay. And then if I multiply that by my occupancy percentage, which is 0.7, 70%, okay, that's going to give me how many room nights were occupied for the whole year. Okay, so if I have my room nights occupied for the whole year and I then multiply that by the rate of $185, that should give me my revenues. Now, variable costs were $1,494,675. Okay? And that's just a number that's given right there, okay, right here. Now, if I have that, I can figure out my variable cost percentage. My apologies. There you go. By simply going our variable costs, and this is just like we did for common size percentage. My variable costs divided by my revenue. And you would want to multiply that by 100 to finish it off. So 35.14 is my variable cost percentage. Now that I've discovered all this information, I can start to do a bit more math. So my contribution margin I can now find out. I need to find out my break-even sales revenue, because without that I can't find out my break-even units, and without that I can't find out my break-even occupancy. Okay? So first, contribution margin percentage. I need to go my 100% minus the 35.14%. Okay? Because it's 100% minus my variable cost percent. So 64.86% was my contribution margin last year. Now, my break-even sales revenue. I've got my fixed cost right here of 1.5 million. I'm going to simply divide that by my contribution margin, so 0.6486. And we want to use 2 decimal places for this for sure. So that's going to tell me that to break even last year, okay, or we'll keep the decimals, sorry, to get more accurate numbers. To break even last year, this hotel needed to hit $2.3 million in revenue. And that's the moment where they didn't make any money profit-wise, but they also didn't lose money. Okay. So now to figure out my break-even units, I would simply go my break-even sales revenue, which we just figured out, $653.45. And we would divide that by my average unit selling price. My average unit, in this case we agreed, is occupied rooms, so rooms that are being sold. So a unit is a room, so average room selling price. That kind of sounds like average daily rate, doesn't it? So that's what we divided by, the $185, which is the average daily rate. And that would give us, and we're going to get rid of some, we're going to add a comma, get rid of some decimals. I need to sell 12,501 rooms in order to achieve this break-even sales revenue. So that was my break-even units. And then lastly, I need to figure out my occupancy, my break-even occupancy. So I needed to sell 12,501 rooms to break even. Okay. So if I divide that by how many rooms we have available for the whole year, I should get an occupancy percentage. So 90 times 365 days in the year. That's going to give me my room nights available for the whole year. And we'll turn that into a percentage, give us a couple decimals, get rid of a couple decimals there. So there it is. So my 38.05% is my break-even occupancy that I need. Okay. Now, this is the answer that we need for this question, but we needed to go through these steps first. And it's not bad to maybe keep track of this as you go, especially maybe on a test, because there might be questions that relate back to this information later on. Okay. So now, question number 2. How much revenue would I need to generate if I wanted to earn $100,000 net income? How would that translate into occupancy? So really what we're calculating for here, it's kind of like a break-even question, but we're going to use our bottom-up question, but we're going to use a break-even approach, which is going to make things just as quick. Okay, so income after tax goal is what here? We're saying that we want to achieve $100,000 of income after tax. Now, if you remember, in order to calculate the sales volume, you need to reach any required operating profit. I need to go required operating profit plus fixed costs, and whatever the answer to that is, I need to divide it by contribution margin percentage. Okay. So I don't have my required operating profit yet. Remember, operating profit is the same as our income before tax. Net income, okay, is our income after tax. So I need my required operating profit because I have my fixed costs here and I have my contribution margin percentage because we just calculated it. So we can now go ahead and figure out my income before tax. And how? Well, what we did in the bottom-up approach comes into play here. Because if you remember, income before tax, and you can go back to your bottom-up presentation, is simply your income after tax divided by 1 minus whatever the tax rate is, which is, in this case, 0.32. Okay. So I need to, and we'll get rid of decimals here, $147,059 is how much I need in operating profit to achieve this goal, based on the fact that I have 32% tax. Okay. So now that we have that, we can actually add our operating profit that we need for that amount of income after tax. We can add our taxes, which is 1.5 million. You want to make sure you do this first. Take your time with BEDMAS, please. Okay. And then we're going to divide it by our contribution margin percentage, which was our 64.86%. And all I'm doing is completing this formula, okay, using the numbers that we have. So if I want to make $100,000 in net income, I need to have sales of $2,539,406. Get rid of decimals again. Okay. So your solution file, by the way, may be slightly different, and the only reason for that is potentially because if I was using cell referencing in your solution file, I was using all of the decimals. Okay, so I think they're off by less than $200. That's perfectly normal if you're using Excel compared to a calculator. Now, we can start to figure out, and this is our revenue. Okay, so if I want that, we can actually write required revenue in order to achieve my $100,000 in net income. Okay, so that would be part 1 of this question. But now it's asking me what that means for occupancy percentage. So the first step is going to be I need to find out what that means in rooms. Remember, we're calling these units when we're taking our break-even calculation. So we can use our break-even units calculation here, okay? But instead of break-even sales revenue, we're just going to use our required revenue. So in rooms, what this means is that we need to sell $2,539,406, and that's just simply replacing my break-even sales revenue divided by that average daily rate of $185. Okay? That's the average unit selling price. And I'm just finding out my break-even units for $100,000, how many I need to sell to reach that amount. And let's change that into a number. I need to sell 13,727 rooms, okay, in order to achieve this required revenue. And then again, if we're looking for an occupancy percentage, we're going to go our break-even units. This is basically our break-even units at this case, because in order to achieve this, I need to have this amount. Okay? So we're going to do just like we did with break-even occupancy. Our 13,727 rooms are the rooms I need to achieve my $100,000 net income. I'm going to divide it by how many rooms I have available for the whole year. Okay? And that's going to give me a certain occupancy percentage. And we're definitely going to change that into occupancy, add 2 decimals, 41.79%. Okay? So I need to achieve 41.79% occupancy percentage at the $185 average daily rate. If I do that and I sell this many rooms, I should achieve my required revenue of this much, which will then give me $100,000 in net income. Okay? Now, lastly, if my average daily rate increased by $5 and I still wanted to generate $100,000 in net income, what would be my target occupancy? Okay. So some things don't really change here. So I still have to figure out my income before tax. Okay. But when you think about it, we just did this math right here. So we know that it's $100,000 is my target. And we just did the math, so we know that the operating profit is going to be that much more. So really all I'm finding out is if my average daily rate increased by $5 and I still wanted to generate $100,000 in net income, what would be my target occupancy? So has this part changed here? It hasn't. Okay, we're still, and I'll just copy this down. For this, I still need this required revenue in order to reach $100,000. This part hasn't changed. Take your time reading the question, right? Because I still want to reach $100,000 in net income. That doesn't change my required revenue, this change in ADR. It doesn't change my required revenue at all. I still need to hit this amount in order to reach my goal of $100,000. What does change is my average unit selling price. Okay, if we look at this calculation, this part has changed because I've increased it by $5. So I need to find out my rooms. Okay, room nights required. Okay, so I'm going to divide it's going to be the same calculation as before. The only difference is we're dividing our required revenue by our previous average daily rate, which is $185, and then we said we can increase our average daily rate by $5. So it's going to be $190 now. So I'm taking my required revenue, which is essentially, if we look at these calculations, my break-even sales revenue, and I'm dividing it by the average unit selling price, which is now my average daily rate plus $5. Okay. And that's going to tell me this should be a number that I need to sell 13,365 room nights at that average daily rate to achieve my required revenue. And again, the question is asking what's the target occupancy then? We need to divide our room nights occupied, our forecasted room nights occupied, or room nights required, divided by how many room nights I have for the whole year, room nights available. And that should give me a percentage, 40.68%. And that is the question right there. That is the answer to this question, because the question is saying if I want to add $5 to my ADR, if I think I'm going to increase my ADR by $5 and I still want to generate $100,000 in net income, what would be my target occupancy? Okay. So hopefully that helps a bit. Simply review this video again, try these questions a couple of times. Your next video will be on break-even food and beverage.